So that's for the active ones of you. Those who would rather just spend their Sunday sitting reading the papers, and let's tell us what's in them. Here to review them this morning are the anthropologist Marianne Hotter and the broadcaster Pete Price. There they are. Very good morning to both of you. You're looking very colourful and alive for this early Sunday morning, so lovely to see you both. So let's get cracking, shall we? Marianne, you picked out the Observer's front page to get us started, and their focus is on a trade deal, a post-Brexit trade deal, which is not faring so well, they say.
Well, that's right. So these are figures that have been released about UK trade with Japan. So historic deal, so-called, was signed and sealed in October 2020, and the hope was that this would bring around £15 billion worth of trade with Japan, import trade and export. But actually, what we found is that in the year from June 21 to June 22, albeit a year where lots of other things have been happening in the world, trade exports have gone down to 11.9 billion from 12.3, so nowhere close to this £15 billion kind of landmark figure, but actually less than it was. The question is this a trend that's going to continue and exports are going to go down? Obviously, at the point that we left the EU, the hope was that that would free us up to forge all these different trade deals with all the various nations around the world, set our own terms. Japan actually said, basically, this deal is replicating what agreement we had with the UK when they were in the EU. But a lot of the work that was coming through the UK in terms of services as well as goods was because we were effectively a gateway to the EU market, which isn't quite the case now. Again, this ends up being a hugely politicised issue in the UK, perhaps understandably still, and so it means it's quite difficult to kind of actually get to the heart of the facts and figures of this, because it ends up being a kind of Remona versus Brexiteer, very polarising debate, which entirely obfuscates the realities. It also means that I suspect our politicians are still not making great decisions. So Rishi Sunak has been quoted this week, obviously, as having to deny claims that he's seeking a closer alignment with the EU, a sort of Swiss-style Brexit, where basically a lot more of the EU regulations, rules, trade deal systems, trading systems would be replicated. He's being forced by sort of Conservative Party members to deny those claims and go, no, Brexit is Brexit, why we mean what we say. But I think we have to start to dismantle that wall, because it doesn't serve anyone good. At this point, we have to be incredibly pragmatic, make deals that work for UK PLC, and leave the toxic politics to one side.
Well, yes, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because as the paper says, the former Environment Secretary George Eustice was very critical of the deal that was struck with Australia as well. So certainly a lot of pressure on any future deals that are struck. And as you say, that debate over Brexit does seem to be rearing its head a bit again, doesn't it? So interesting to see if we get more stories like that in the future. In the meantime, Pete, let's move on to your first choice, which was the front page of the Sunday Telegraph. And they're focusing on the pressures on A&E, aren't they?
Yeah, they are indeed. They're saying 12-hour waits, ambulances are way behind with the times. 4,000 people are waiting in the emergency. The emergency care is falling apart. We've got a nurses' strike coming up. What upsets me about this is it's a very unhelpful message. We keep hearing all the problems in hospitals. When is a newspaper going to do an actual nice piece about what's happening in A&E? Because you're not just there for 12 hours. Sometimes you're there. I've been there a couple of times. Sometimes you're there waiting for the blood test to come back. Then you're waiting there for the results. Then you wait to see another doctor because he's dealing with another system or another part of your illness. And then you've got the time wasters. And make no mistake, any nurse will tell you the time wasters are absolutely ridiculous up there. Same with the ambulances. People are still ringing ambulances when they don't need them. They're unbelievable. So I think it'd be great, instead of just being and knocking all the time and putting the fear of God on people who are worried, who are ill, I just think it'd be nice to somebody to actually say, what's really going on in A&E?
Okay, saw you shaking your head, Marianne. Did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I do, Pete. When you say time wasters, partly those are people who the social care system has failed and they have nowhere else to go. There is no other safety net, and so
They go to hospital.
Yeah, because where else are you going to go if someone's had a fall because their care system isn't working? But the other thing is, I think it's really super important that the reality of this is laid bare and that we look at it with gloves off, partly to support those nurses, those doctors and those paramedics, because they have been calling for changes because the NHS has been critically underfunded for so long now that the system is on the knees and the people.
Pete,
and
It's not underfunded. Say about underfunded.
And so
I've
we
been
have
private.
to
Okay.
call it.
One at a time. Sorry, Marianne. Let Pete come back in on your points there. Go on, Pete.
You say about underfunded. I've been private a few times for a couple of operations, and I've seen the bills. I've seen the costings. Where do you expect the money to come from? We've got a phenomenal system in this country still. Go to India, go to Pakistan, go these places. We've got a system. Where do you honestly think the money's coming from? You know, a money tree?
Well, that's the point of paying taxes. That's the point.
How much tax?
That's the point of the government. It's hard to do this on Skype, but that's where good planning and advanced planning, where you can perhaps bring in private investment, but fundamentally we have a population that's aging. We have lots of people in hospitals who can't leave hospital because the care system isn't functioning, and so they're stuck in a system where you can't get more people in through the door. And honestly, Pete, it costs people lives. People are dying because they can't get a 999 ambulance, and we need to call that out because it is unacceptable.
Okay.
And we've had a pandemic, a dreadful pandemic. So how do we recover from that?
Such an interesting debate. Unfortunately, we can't solve the health services issues right here because we haven't got time. I'm going to crack on if that's okay, both of you. Sunday Times next. Their main story is on this report into the fire brigade, London Fire Brigade, that was so damning yesterday. What's the Sunday Times take on this, Marianne?
Yeah, if you wanted good news, this isn't it, I'm afraid. So this is Andy Rowe, the head of the London Fire Brigade, responding to what's been described as a series of stomach-churning reports. So this is definitive. The report was independent. It says that the London Fire Brigade is institutionally racist and misogynistic. I'm not gonna. It's so unpalatable. Some of the findings about what happened to black firefighters, women firefighters, it's just unbearable. But the person who was conducting that research has said that they've been inundated by requests from other public institutions asking for reports to be done about their workplaces because they have similar evidence. So the three institutions that have been sort of named are the NHS, the BBC, and the police forces from lots of police forces from around the country.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
This is an issue that it needs, a little bit like the NHS for me, and underfunding and the impacts. Shine a light on it, and
Sorry to rush
those.
Sorry to rush you, Marianne. I just want to squeeze in one more story with Pete, if that's okay. Let's move on to the Sunday Express piece. I know you wanted to talk about their headline, Migrants House in Forces Homes, they say.
Yes, and this will upset my lovely Oppo. Yes, I think it's incredible. They're cutting down on hotels because hotels and B&B and holiday homes, all the places they're using is costing £7 million a day. So they're saying, let's put them in forces homes. But there are, I think, 2,500 veterans that have got nowhere to live at all. Now, when these people are going to live in the homes, they're also going to have all their bills paid. They're going to get £40 a week to spend. They're going to have their heating and the costs paid, which will incense an awful lot of people.
I'm so sorry to wrap you up, Pete. I'm so sorry we're out of time, but we're going to see you again in the next hour. We'll discuss it a bit further, maybe. Thanks so much.